Hey everybody, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here. Quick update on Ian, kind of on location today. I'm actually in Panera, so we're on the road. So we're going to do a little quick update here on the tropical system, which is still a long ways away from the Carolinas, but it is going to pose a significant threat to the southeast, parts of Florida, and eventually maybe some heavy rain here for the Carolinas. You can see the system, it's way down here south of Cuba, so it's still a long ways to go being down here over parts of the Western Caribbean, but it's starting to get its act together, which means it's going to eventually spin up to maybe a category 3 or 4 in the next 48 hours because there's rapid intensification likely over this really deep warm water in the Western Caribbean, and as it moves into the southeastern Gulf of Mexico up towards the Florida Peninsula. Now, as it gets up in that area, that's where we'll start to see maybe a little bit of wind shear. But the two tracks you see on here, one's the Hurricane Center track, but also the model consensus track, which does take it as a tropical depression through the spine of the Appalachians. So that would mean a significant flash flood threat down the road. Let me show you the latest track from the Hurricane Center. This was the 8 p.m. advisory. I'll move my head out of the way just so you can see the data there. Category 4 on Tuesday in the southeast Gulf, and then some slow weakening, but it's probably going to spread out and become a much larger storm as it approaches the Big Bend area of the Florida Panhandle. Now, anybody in the Florida Peninsula needs to be on guard for this because remember, there's still potential that this could take a right turn. This angle of approach means any sudden shift to the right brings it onshore into Florida really quickly. So if you're down here in the central part of the state or even up here in the Western Panhandle, you need to be set. You need to be ready for a significant hurricane because potentially this could be a significant impact for you in Florida, just about anywhere from southwest Florida all the way to the Panhandle. So this is not something I would take very lightly at all. Potentially could be a significant storm as it moves north. I'll kind of move my head out of the way so you can see that. The long range, the concern for the Carolinas is going to be heavy rain because as you can see, the long range forecast does show heavy rain potential as this moves up into the southeast. I'm going to explain why that could become a significant issue here in a minute, but let's take a look at some model data real quickly. This is the super ensemble, which kind of shows all the different model variations or different simulations we have. If we go through time, I can show you how this will slowly but surely move up through the Gulf of Mexico and eventually start to have a little bit of a spread in the guidance, which means there's some uncertainty in the southeast Gulf. All right, so we threw the super ensembles in here again, just so you get an idea of the spread in the guidance, because I think this does a really good job kind of showing the possibilities. You see a pretty consistent track up into the southeast Gulf, and then there's a little bit of spread from the Western Panhandle all the way down to southwest Florida. So that's why that whole area needs to be on guard. But then eventually, the mean shows it heading up into central South Carolina, maybe North Carolina by next weekend, into the early part of the following week, depending on how much it slows down. Here's a look at the GFS ensemble, kind of the same setup here. You see the general track is up through the Panhandle of Florida and into the western part of North Carolina. Well, why is that going to be problematic for us? Well, let me show you real quickly here something kind of interesting. As a system comes north, you see the trough, which is the blue area over the northeast. This is what's pulling it north. So naturally, you would expect this to get picked up, head up in this area, and eventually recurve like so. Well, what's interesting is this trough right here kind of moves out fairly quickly and weakens, and the system gets hung up over Florida as this big ridge builds back to the north. This is one of those cold air damming setups, and as we go into Saturday, what's interesting is you got high pressure building up here at the surface supplying some northeast winds, and then you've got this low pressure, which is a hurricane or a tropical system throwing moisture back here. The combination of that would mean really heavy rain for the Carolinas. So that's a scenario we're going to have to watch very carefully as we get into next weekend. So I'm talking Friday night, Saturday, Sunday, that first full weekend in October. That could be really, really problematic. So let's go back to the map, and I'll kind of show you here how this unfolds using the GFS American model. All right, so let's look at the setup of this as we go through time. I'm going to show you a couple things here. Again, this is just one piece of guidance, but going to kind of show you the general idea. You'll see the high pressure building over New England coming up. This is going to be Wednesday into Thursday. So you see that surface high? That's a 1034 surface high. There's our tropical system down there. We'll go a little bit further. I'm going to go into about Thursday, which is when we think some kind of impact could happen, really Thursday morning into Friday. look what's happening here. We've got that what I just talked about, that ridge of high pressure here. It's supplying cool northeast breezes and low-level dry air. At the same time, the tropical system is pushing warm, humid air out of it. So we're going to have to watch for a band of heavy rain to set up maybe just ahead of this system as it moves north. So we go through Thursday afternoon, Thursday night. We go into Thursday night and Friday morning. Rain starts to spread out. Look at that, what's happening in the Carolinas. So I know folks watching this in Florida, you got to be ready for a hurricane. There's no doubt about it. But what's interesting for the Carolinas, in particular the mountains, this could potentially be a significant flood event because of the setup here, the combination of the low pressure and the tropical moisture and high pressure to the north supplying both an east or northeast wind. That's going to push moisture into the higher elevations, and with orographic lift is going to produce a lot of moisture. So watch what happens here as this moves northeast. This is on Friday afternoon into Friday night, and we go into Saturday, and the spine of the mountains are right in the path of that kind of fire hose of moisture, water coming in from the system. Then it becomes kind of an extra tropical, almost kind of like a nor'easter as it pushes over us and then moves to the northeast really slowly. It takes all the way through Sunday and possibly Monday before it moves out. And so there's a lot of consensus that long range, that this is probably going to be somewhere over the southeast through the weekend, maybe even into early next week. And that would mean potentially buckets and buckets of rainfall. So there's still time to watch this. Today is only Sunday. I wanted to post an update. Folks in Florida need to be ready for a hurricane, but if you're watching my vlog here in the Carolinas, the big deal here is we've got to be ready for potentially some significant flood threats going into next weekend. And depending on the warm air setup, maybe severe weather. But one thing about that high pressure supplying the cooler, drier air at the surface might help stabilize things and keep the tornado threat limited. But that's not something we can write off right now. So we're in kind of a watch and wait mode right now, but next weekend in the Carolinas, start thinking about, if you're in a flash flood prone area or a flood prone area, it's probably a good idea now to start planning ahead just in case that moisture in this setup unfolds going into next weekend. Of course, I will post updates throughout the week. We'll do more detailed vlogs probably twice a day, starting Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. We get closer to the system. Like I said, we've got most of the week to watch this. But if you're in Florida right now, again, I can't reiterate this enough. This is for right now. I want everybody in Florida to be in the set stage. You need to be getting ready for this system right now, because potentially you are going to see a major hurricane off the coast of the Carolinas, or off the coast of you there in Florida, coming up probably as soon as Wednesday into Thursday. So just beware now, be weather aware. It's something we need to be ready for as we keep an eye on Ian.